Just have the applause before I start. That's great. Thank you very much. I'm not going to talk about what I said I'd talk about in the programme, so apologies for that. But I'm going to just give you some memories of my time, or give you some of my memories of my time here in the practice. So I moved down from Dundee in 1985 with a young family. The interview to get the job was quite memorable. Part of it involved Helen McEwen, driving me around the area, showing me the glorious Oxfordshire countryside. At one point she said, well, we do have some social housing, and drove me past neat rows of semi-detached houses with gardens. Now, I'd done my training in Dundee, and social housing was a little bit different. It was tower blocks with lifts that didn't work and slightly smelly stairwells. So this was obviously a step up for me. The partners then brought me down on the sleeper train for a second interview with my wife Janice, who at that time was 8 months pregnant. In those days, as we've just been hearing, the doctor's spouse was very important because she or he had to answer the phones while the doctor was out doing the visits. And I do remember my father was a GP, and I remember my mother answering the phone to a patient in Glasgow and saying quite primly on the phone to this patient, well, there's no need to use language like that. So, you know, the doctor's wives had to put up with quite a lot of nonsense. Anyway, it's part of the interview. We toured around all the partners' lovely homes on that day, being fed all the time, starting, I think, again with Helen's house. And I think they wanted to just check that the Scots could use a knife and fork correctly. At the end of the day, we went to the Hasler's house for supper, and John and Lindsay, recognising Janice's exhausted pregnant state, said, you don't have to say anything, you don't have to eat anything, and they very kindly then shoveled us back on the train up north. And I had tried to create a good impression, but to save some money for the practice, who'd funded the train tickets. I'd collected tokens from cornflake packets to get me a discount on the train. I'm sure that's what swung it in the final decision for the job. So when I started, I was 26, which was really quite young. I'd started medical school at 17, the result of a slightly bizarre Scottish education system. I succeeded Peter Hemphill, who we've all just heard about, and those were very big shoes to fill. Peter and Jill were very kind. They put me up for several weeks before our rented house was ready. Tom Stewart, John Hasler, Helen McEwen and Margaret Thompson, who's here somewhere, were all very welcoming to this new Scottish upstart. And I took over responsibility for Peter's large list of patients and got to know lots of wonderful characters. I looked after Polish war evacuees who didn't really speak any English at all, people who lived in very old houses with mud floors, titled gentry, and most intimidating of all, other doctors. I became interested in helping pregnant women have their babies at home or in the community hospital if that's what they wanted to do. We had the excellent June Hazelman, who's here somewhere. Where are you, June? Hello, June. June was the attached midwife for much of the time, and we had some wonderful experiences at all hours of the day and night. Babies were born in baths. One baby was born in a bedroom lined with tanks of large pet spiders. And the health visitor who's then due to go and visit the house refused to go in because of the spiders. But one of the great joys of coming back to help vaccinate here after I'd retired was that I was able to vaccinate several young people who had been present at their delivery, so that was lovely. So sometimes I get home in the middle of the night after attending a delivery, and Janice would ask me if the baby was a boy or a girl. And of course I couldn't remember, just grateful that the baby was alive and breathing. That was the most important thing. And latterly I became more interested in allergies. There were not really a hospital service locally, so I helped to provide care not just for our patients but also other patients referred in to us. Partly common allergies like nuts and hay fever and all that sort of thing, but also more interesting, helping to detect more interesting allergies like lupin flower or cochineal or even cannabis. So cycling, so I was inspired by William Byrd's Health Walks initiative, the excellent Health Walks. And I started a cycling group in 1997 to help people discover that there are other ways to exercise and get fit, other than just going to the gym. That was William's mantra. And riders of all ages would come and explore the countryside. Sometimes they'd fall off, unfortunately, but largely it went well. One 70-year-old said to me that he looked forward to the Tuesday nights because it was just like going out with his mates as a kid, which is a lovely thing to say. And so it became clear that the benefits of exercise were not just physical, they were also social and psychological. And that was a really good lesson. And again, thanks to William for inspiring all that. The rides have evolved and they've become quite self-sufficient. One group likes to stick to the tarmac and the other group does everything possible to avoid it. I know of a couple of people who found new jobs through the cycling group. Right, so one of the other lovely spin-offs was the ability to support the primary school's Parent-Teachers Association in running the On Your Bike event, which is a community cycle ride. Lots of people will come and ride on a series of circuits in the local countryside. And that has also the extra spin-off of giving families the confidence to get out on their bicycles with each other. And you see far more young children and adults out cycling now after the On Your Bike event. Sonic Common would be an ideal cycling community. The parking at the health centre and the traffic in Wood Lane would be much better if people would cycle or walk if their journeys of a mile or less to take. Anyway, people still ask what I miss about working now that I've retired, and it's pretty easy. I miss the ongoing personal relationships with the patients. I miss knowing those patients. People stop me in the co-op now and tell me, you know that thing you cut off my neck? Pause. Me thinking, oh, well, it's never come back. Oh, thank goodness. So that still goes on, and it's lovely. It's absolutely lovely to have that continuing relationship, even if people still recognise that I'm no longer current. I miss the detective work of making a diagnosis and chasing down information, just finding stuff out, putting it together using experience, and that was lovely. And of course, I miss working in a team with great dedicated colleagues, and that has also been a great pleasure. So general practice faces a lot of challenges now, but I'm sure that Sonic Common will rise to those challenges by continuing to offer patient-centred, continuous care and being part of the community. Thank you very much.